Welcome everyone on the live stream to the first edition of Flyover Fallout in 2025. Santi, how good does it feel to be back? Like result aside for the moment, how good does it feel to be back after
It's
a
great
match?
to be back. It's great to be back to doing this on Sunday mornings. I missed it. It had been a while. So hey, we're here, and I think I don't. Did we do the end of the season? Did we do it together after the game
I
against
don't
Minnesota?
I don't
No.
think so. No, definitely not after that game. I think that was a you and
Be-
Phil thing because I
Okay.
was I was still I was in Germany for that one.
Oh yeah, you were still.
Yeah, I caught the match at like 3 a.m.
Yeah.
And when now I feel like that's true sicko behavior, not to toot my own horn, but when you're eliminated from the playoffs,
I
uh,
know. I
and you
know.
catch a match at the airport in we were in Budapest and then in Germany at that point.
Yeah,
So
but anyway, I know it has been a while
yeah.
because the previous game was against Houston, and I also missed that one because I left town after that game.
You know,
So
I know you were on the pod like on the Thursday, like a couple weeks ago, and you missed our live stream, our
yeah,
live pod at Blue
yeah,
Jay because you were under the weather. And honestly, like that was the right call, saving your voice for
yeah,
Saturday.
yeah, yeah. Although
But
I didn't get to call any goals, but that's okay.
I know. This is like a warm up for you, like easing into things, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I think I would bet the two things people are tuning into this live stream, they're gonna, and we haven't started the pod recording yet. People are thinking two things. They're thinking, oh my God, it's amazing to have Santi back, because that means it's like things are real. And like Ryan Biles said in our chat, not the mustache, no.
It's
I am
gone.
I am clean shaven for 2025. We'll see. We'll
So
see
for
what.
the new season, Matt Baker gets rid of the mustache.
Yeah, I would say it was bound to happen, but I don't know. You just have those spur of the moment things where you just got to change something up.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
Well, good.
All right. If you are familiar with our Fallout shows, probably not much is going to change. I don't know if you have any new rituals that you started this year because you broadcast the game for the Spanish broadcasting partner of City Santi. But for me, and if people are used to checking my social media during the games, for at least for home games, probably for away, most of the away too. I've got this resolution to post less on social media. So I have found myself in the past getting too much into like looking at my phone after a big play and just trying to get something, like having some meaningful thing to say, but everybody's watching the same game, right? And
Right.
I thought it would be so I, it sounds dumb, but I tried it out, not tweeting during a game. And it's kind
Mm,
of amazing how much more into the game you get when you're not focused on having something to say after each play and you just
right.
like
And
watch the
you
run of play.
you could also miss a big play after that big play you're tweeting about.
Exactly. Yeah, these rebounds, like there's a Thomas Totland play towards the end of the game where he had two shots and might have missed the second shot if I was busy looking at my phone. You
Yeah.
never know. So that's in the point is that when it comes to Fallout, one thing that I had done in the past is have all these things that I tweet out and I would look through and try to make it like more detailed, like go play by play. And so you may notice more overarching thoughts or kind of takeaways, which I think is better for Fallout. Like we all watch the game. You can see the highlights on Apple TV, MLS Season Pass. Trying to keep it to like what we can actually take away, recaps from, because I think that's a better format. So it's one of the things I want to try a little more. Anything you're doing differently or new rituals that you might have that you want to bring luck to the team in 25?
Well, I wore some stuff I had never worn to the broadcast, but I guess it didn't work because we didn't get 3 points.
Yeah.
Like I wore a sweater. I had never done that, and obviously
Okay.
because it was so cold, and they told us like try to bundle up just in case. I said, oh, I'm gonna wear a sweater for a
Because
change.
you're exposed to the elements. I mean, if people didn't know that, I mean, sort of.
Well,
You're in the room.
we're in the booth.
Yeah.
We usually open the windows, but we didn't open them yesterday just because
Okay.
I didn't want to like I've been feeling like really well like the
Mhm.
last couple of days, and I think the cold is hopefully over, but I didn't want to
Smart.
risk like getting air and all of that, so we didn't open the
Smart.
windows.
That's smart. Happy to see you're doing better too. I would hate to have had you have a downturn. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's what I missed the live pod on Thursday. But hey, I'm here.
Yeah,
We're gonna bring you guys this every Sunday or sometimes Monday, since we have some quite a few Sunday games.
that's right. I think at least 4 games. I don't have the schedule in front of me, but I know at least 4
Yeah,
Sunday
it's at
games.
least, I think it's maybe six, but yeah,
Maybe,
something like that.
yeah, it's at least 4 Sunday night soccer games. And then
Mm,
I know we have an Austin game on March 30th in the afternoon. I think there's another afternoon game that we have against the Galaxy, probably because that's our thing where we have just
right.
afternoon games. But yeah, no, if we play on a Saturday, expect us to be here on Sunday morning, trying to do 8. I know just personally with 2 kids, wife, all that stuff, it works better to do early in the morning. And it's kind of like knee-jerk reactions. So I think that just gives a little more raw authenticity. It worked well for us last season. I think we're going to try it this year. And then if on those Sundays, maybe we'll do like a Monday lunchtime type
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out. Worst case scenario, if we can't do this, then we'll just post whatever our thoughts are online. You never know. It's a
No,
long
no, but
season. It's a
we'll,
long
we'll
season.
I don't think we have missed a fallout. Like sometimes it has been like Phil and I, or
That's
you
true.
and him, but yeah, we don't think we have missed one
We
yet.
get flyover friends involved.
Right.
All right, you ready to do this?
Let's do it.
Okay. Grab your coffees, everybody. We're about to dig in. Welcome in, everyone, to Flyover Footy. My name is Matt Baker. I'll be your host today, joined by my friend in soccer, Santiago Beltran, for the inaugural 2025 version of Flyover Fallout. If you're not familiar with our Fallouts, we come live on live stream at you the day after matches. In this case, we're recording this Sunday morning and just giving all of the recaps and takes and thoughts on the match that St. Louis City just played. We start off the season a little down, but overall still excited with a 0-0 draw against the Colorado Rapids. A draw at home is never something that you really want to look forward to recapping, and a goalless draw has a little less excitement behind it. But ultimately, you can't take the luster out of the first game of the season. The vibes are still high. You look at the standings and, it's way too early to even look at what this means long term, but there's plenty of positives that we're going to get into. And I want to introduce my partner, Santiago Beltran, who joins me every week as often as we can for our Flyover Fallouts. Santi, you were on the broadcast for the Spanish version of the game. How was it? How are you doing? And how excited are you to be back for St. Louis City season?
Well, I'm excited about this 2025 season. It was great to be back to debut. I missed it. I missed it. It was a great break, but just I miss doing it and being at the stadium and seeing people when I'm walking in. So it was great. It was great to be back, and it was a good broadcast. Obviously, we didn't get to call any goals, but it was an exciting game, and I like what I saw from the team overall, the new style. So I'm excited for what's coming. And yeah, obviously you want to start the season with a win at home, but just didn't happen. The team like created chances. It just didn't have enough clear chances, in my opinion. But I think that the team will continue working on that, and the chances will come. But overall, a good start for the Olaf Melberg era, I think.
I would agree. Chances that we're going to get into came in spades, although nothing landed. But we usually start off our fallouts taking a look at the starting 11 and what it means and anything we could take away from that. And I think there were a few surprises with the expected majority of the lineup. So let's dig right into it. The starting 11, Olaf Melberg's first starting 11 in St. Louis City history for him as head coach. Saw Roman Berkey between the pipes. You had a back three of Kyle Hebert, Henry Kessler, and Josh Yarrow, with Giannis Horn as the left wing back, Thomas Totland as the right wing back, Edu Leuven and Akil Watts, your central midfielders, Marcel Hartl as your central attacking midfielder, and Klaus and Betcher were your forwards. Oh boy, we could probably spend quite a while looking at some of the nuances for this. So I'm just going to start it off with this starting 11. The fun fact I have, because we like to do trivia now on Thursdays. So my trivia that I'm just going to spout out is we're in year 3 of St. Louis City, right, Santi? This starting 11 in year 3 of St. Louis City saw 6 players who featured for the 2022 City 2 team. And those 6 players are Kyle Hebert, Josh Yarrow, Akil Watts, the 3 that I think all fans can remember back to,
Mm-hmm.
as well as Robin Berkey, Eddie Leuven, and Klaus, who featured for a few games at the end of the season. One of the benefits of that. I thought that was kind of hilarious in the continuity of this because so much is talked about the newness going on, the new players coming in last season, the new head coach. But when all is said and done, I mean, you do have health questions we're going to get into for some players. But to see Kyle Hebert and Josh Yarrow, as well as Akil Watts in the starting 11 to open the 3rd season for St. Louis City says a lot about them. Says a lot about what the new head coach thinks of them, because at this point, you're still looking at everyone's still trying to prove themselves. It's a fresh start for everybody under Olaf. He watched the team last year, but when you have that opportunity, you look to see who maybe had been flying under the radar that's getting a chance with the coach. And Akil Watts, let's just say, probably in there because of the Chris Durkin injury. That's fine. But he's been doing great work in preseason consistently alongside Edu Leuven in that double pivot or double box to box. They play on and off in the midfield. Kyle Hebert and Josh Yarrow are fascinating because Josh Yarrow, like we talked about on Flyover, had played the most minutes of any City player in preseason. So he's clearly in form. He's in favor for Olaf Melberg. And Kyle Hebert, boy, I might be hard-pressed to name a single player on the St. Louis City roster more polarizing to the fan base than Kyle Hebert. And I think that's more so to do with where he plays on the
Yeah.
field than it does Kyle Hebert himself. I think everybody appreciates the defensive work that Kyle Hebert puts in. But he's so often now, especially in preseason, asked to move out on the wings or play a fullback position under Carnell or Hackworth that, I don't know, people feel kind of less comfortable with him moving up the field and what he can do in the attack. And so you want him to stay back defensively. And the last thing I'll say is when I first saw this lineup, I assumed Hebert would be the left wing back and Horn would be the left center back based on what we saw in the preseason, which is that
Right.
Horn played the left center back. Kyle Hebert played left wing back in a game. They were on the field together and that's where they were. So you try to draw conclusions from preseason. Got that one wrong. It happens. I was excited to see Hebert drop back, and we got to see a little bit of what Giannis Horn looks like on the wing side. What were your thoughts when you first saw this lineup? What did you make of it as the game progressed?
Well, my first impression when I saw the 3 center backs, I don't think anybody had that trio of center backs in their
Nope.
starting lineup. I did have Heaver on my starting lineup, though. I didn't know anything about Nilsson's injury, but I was like, oh, the team is probably be cautious with Nilsson, and Heaver would probably play there. But to me, Jaro was a surprise, even though he played a lot in preseason. I was surprised that Timo Vanguard wasn't part of the starting lineup.
Same.
But I said, well, I guess this is a new coach. These guys have proven themselves, and he's confident with this lineup. So to me, that trio as center backs was a surprise. But then Akil Watts and Edu Leuven is what we had seen in preseason,
Mm-hmm.
and same thing with the rest of the midfield and the strikers. I think that's what we had seen and kind of expected since Seri Toichart missed the last week of training because he was getting his green card, and also Melberg had said that he would probably be involved later in the game. So I didn't expect him to start, but it was a little surprise. Also, with what you said, like Horn as a wing back instead of center back. But I think it was a good lineup to start the season based on what you have. Not sure why Timo didn't start, but it must be what the coach saw in Heber and Yarrow. But it also makes me proud to see 2 guys from City 2, like being in that back line. I really like that. 2 guys who started there, and Heber earned a contract, and then he earned a contract extension. Jarrow, when he came to City 2, the rumor is that he had a City 2 plus first year with City, but he
Mm-hmm.
also earned a contract extension, and he's a hard worker, and it's great to see these guys still being relevant and being good for the team.
Yeah, Hebert was signed to a contract extension last season, end of season before, but a while ago, Yarrow signed his extension here recently. And with Yarrow, one of the things we speculated on was he getting time in preseason to be showcased to be sold with center
Right.
back depth? It seems like it was the opposite, where you could either look at it one of two ways. Is he really in favor of Olaf and he enjoys what he's seeing, or are we showcasing him for others? And the start in the first game tells me that it's likely we're excited about what we see under Olaf Melberg for Josh Yarrow. And the thing about Kyle Hebert plays into this next point, which is this team is not entirely healthy when it comes to their depth. Yeah, we sold Indiana Vasilev 2 days before the season started. We signed 2 players, 2 first-team contracts here recently. But I think the subs that were in this available for this game, let's list them out because that plays into this next point. Alfredo Morales, Conrad Wallem, Cedric Toyshirt, who all appeared, Celio Pompeu, Tomas Olstra, Chris Durkin, Timo Baumgartel, Joey Zielinski, and Ben Lunt. So 2 of those players were the recent contract signings in Alfredo Morales and Joey Zielinski. But there were a lot of players who weren't, they didn't make the matchday roster. And if you remember at Olaf Melberg's press conference, he said everybody who is healthy will be on the roster. And so that gave us, like, I had to pause and I couldn't ask because I was processing it on Thursday during the press conference, just a second too late of what he was saying and what it actually meant. I was, because you saw me in the press room, I was just looking around like, did anybody else hear what he just said?
Yeah.
And turns out what it means, we found out a little bit at the post-game presser where Olaf confirmed that Joachim Nilsson and Rasmus Alm are both battling injuries, as well as we found out Michael Wenzel has been nursing an injury as well. Melberg did note a couple things on Nilsson and Alm. They're not the same injury. He says they're not too severe, and he confirmed they did happen late in preseason. We talked about on the live show that rumored Joachim Nilsson might have taken a knock during the San Jose closed-door friendly. The end of preseason is a vague time frame, and we know Rasmus Alm was in the game against NYCFC to finish the televised preseason. Something happened to both of them since then. We will follow this coming week to find out what's going on. But I think that does inform Kyle Hebert, Josh Yarrow, Timo Baumgartel. You could argue what might be going on with him, whether he's just newer to the system. He's getting, I don't know. You could draw your own conclusions. Not worth really diving into, other than Olaf felt more comfortable with Hebert and Yarrow on the back line. And truthfully, like, I don't think you can point to a single thing that they did wrong in this game defensively until Kyle Hebert nearly gave the game away a time or two there in, I want to say 80, 85 minutes. But the collective whole bailed them out in the box. It was a turnover late in the game. But outside of that, Hebert himself did also save what could have been a Colorado goal that we'll talk about in a minute. So you take good moments with the bad moments, and you look to a guy like Henry Kessler that we're going to talk about, who really owned this back line. Like, Henry Kessler has cemented himself in this game as the captain of the back line, in my opinion. Santi, I want to dive into a segment that we might keep on Fallout, but shout out to our boy Stuart Holtgren, who somehow keeps bringing Fulham stuff into our podcast. He did this on the live show, and I laughed at it, but he did this on social media last year, his 3-word reviews. And I don't follow Fulham on social media, but apparently they did this. And so I wanted to read some of the 3-word reviews on both Blue Sky and X that Stu was able to elicit from fans to kind of set the stage for what we're going to talk about. I'm not going to attribute everybody because that would take forever, but subs too late, draw City back. We drew, City was back. Berkey was bored. I like that one from Tom Franklin. Shout out to you on that one.
Good one.
Jerry Hayes, future looks bright. That helps. Promising, but meh from Billy. Still a draw. 2 dropped points. Good vibes with a thumbs up with shout out to Giannis Horn's tattoo. Deserved more points. Defense wins championships. That gives you something to build off of. Glad they're back. Coulda, shoulda, woulda. Still the same. Lots of hope. There's one that had pets of the match, and it looks like KB695 on Blue Sky was in the Purina club seats with their dogs. That's awesome to see. Where was Celio? I wanted Celio. That's an interesting point in that
I'm here.
The attackers that subbed in, you could argue, were Cedric Toyshirt, because we only had 3 subs. We'll talk about that in a minute. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but we will talk about that. Defense way better. Kessler, Totland, Hartle, Toy Shirt needs time. I hope that means Toy Shirt needs to be starting because I want to see him in the starting lineup as soon as he's healthy. Now, Toy Shirt, when I say healthy, I mean fit and training with the team because he just arrived back to St. Louis this past Friday from his green card process. Side note, we haven't received the official club profiles for MLS yet. Hopefully that will come this week. That gives clarity into making sure Toy Shirt got his green card, isn't taking up an international slot, and all this these other mechanisms.
On the game notes, the team issued, he wasn't listed as international. So
Perfect. I'm going to call that as official as it comes, Santi. You're the man for that one. Cedric Toy Shirt officially, according to the show notes, has his green card, is not taking up an international roster slot, which is fantastic. More 3-word reviews. Got to play Betcher. Lack of urgency. Far away, so close. Not there yet. We have future bright ahead. Get SETI fit. 100% agree with that. Not this again for our friend John Love with the Lunatics pod. And I like that because there's a few comments for that. And this is where I'm going to pivot away. There's a few comments about that of same old city type of a thing where the volume of shots are there and good and you like the chances created, but there is still that carryover from last season of being unable to finish. Before we get into some of the first half, second half stuff, what are some of your thoughts on that, Santi? Do you think that that's worth ruminating over, the fact that we had 18 shots total and 0 goals?
it's a small sample, but yeah, obviously there is some concern because yeah, you had so much volume, but there weren't really like, yeah, 18 shots, but maybe two clear chances. The one Betcher had that
The goal?
well, yeah, that one. Well, the play before the goal that hit the
Oh,
post,
yes.
but the one Saga Stephen saved, like Simon Betcher was right there, and I think
Oh, the
Saga
foot,
Stephen was
the one off his foot from the
just right
throw in. Yeah.
just right in the right place at the right time. I don't think he even knew where the ball was, but he got a save. Those were the two clear chances to me. Everything else, like yeah. Oh, and the one, the hair from Betcher, that it was like in a slow motion, and then Stephen was able to get a hand on it. So maybe three. But yeah, I think more chances, more clear chances will be great. Is the first game of the season, is a small sample, so yeah, I get the feeling, the general feeling, like if you think about it, I had even forgotten about this until I was reading at the game notes. Last year, the team was undefeated its first 5 MLS matches, but it was 1 win and 4 draws.
Yeah,
So maybe that's where people are thinking, and there were a
could
lot of
be.
draws also, like in the first 10, 11 games. But it's just one game. It's a new coach. To me, the team look more organized, and it has more variety, playing off the back. Making runs behind the defense with different guys, not always the same guys. I also like that. So I think it's different. I wouldn't say this is the same team as 2024. Yeah, maybe the same result this time, but just give it time. Obviously, people get impatient, and yeah, in this business, you have to get wins. But just give Melberg a few games and get the players and the new system to the players to get used to a new system. Give it some time. There is no need to panic yet. I think the team was very organized. Defense was also very solid. No shots on goal from Colorado. Obviously, a couple of clearances that were gonna create chances for Colorado, from Hebert, and I think one from Kessler. But the team was very good defensively, and I'll take that away too.
I'll echo everything you said. I think structurally, and that's one of the things that I would hope that folks tuning into our pod, especially where we do like to talk about the tactics, the nitty gritty of things, go a little under the hood of the face value. Because I teed you off with the face value of volume of shots, no goals, but you picked up exactly what I wanted to touch on. So I'm glad that we're on the same page, that this is not the same City team from last year. We saw a City 2.0 in their desire to work the ball around in the defensive third, in the middle third. We saw carryover from preseason in how we're progressing the ball, how we're using the wings and the wing back system, how we are. And we saw differences even in the first and second half of the first half. I felt it was more relying on the midfielders and the wingers to progress the ball up. And in the second half, you saw, to borrow a Bradley Carnellism, bravery in the center backs to progress the ball up. You're seeing Josh Yarrow, you're seeing Kyle Hebert get up into the attacking third in a lot of ways. And I thought the interplay between the center backs and the midfielders was kind of fun, because when that happened, yeah, you saw space being taken, but when space is taken by the center backs to move up, it's on kind of the midfielders to say, all right, they've got space because I might be drawing the defenders in certain ways. Do I clear out of their way? Do I turn myself open for a pass? And I thought more often than not, especially with Yarrow, who had a good chance on the wing, who started a good chance on the wing. You had Kyle Hebert, who started a good chance from the left channel. I thought they were taking the appropriate space, and everybody else was kind of following suit in what they needed to do. So that speaks to me about the cohesiveness and the understanding of everyone's roles. Because in this system, when you're building out of the back, you do have a lot more at play in positioning and making sure that you're not just progressing the ball appropriately, but you're off the ball doing what you need to do to be in the right positions. It's trickier. It's more difficult when you're playing the ball out of the back just by necessity. And so a few of the things that I wanted to point out in the flow of the actual game, we have to start, and we honestly could probably finish with that 17-minute sequence that had a throw in from Thomas Totland. This might be the one that you were talking about, where it was tipped by Colorado, bounced back to Betcher in the box, and he had a pretty strong shot on goal from point blank range right at Zach Steffen, who, to your point, I think just instinctively blocked it away. Steffen just happened to be in the exact right place. He was probably marking Betcher, honestly, because Betcher was one of the only City players in the box. Right. Smart positioning by Steffen to be looking at Betcher like that. Steffen blocked it away. And this was actually the first and highest expected goal chance of the night. So it was the first shot on goal, highest expected goal chance of the entire night in a single shot, 0.58 XG. And XG, if you're new to Flyover Footy, is basically the metric of where on the field you're getting a shot and what the percentage chance it has of going in. So a 1 is obviously like there's 0 chance of it ever missing, which is not a thing. But 0.58 is a really high XG shot. And it had a 0.79 expected goals on target. So you take the shot as you were on the field, like where was Betcher on the field when he shot that? And then you look at what part of the goal was he targeting. XGOTs tend to be higher than XGs because you're adding a likelihood of it being a goal depending on where it is on target. Like if you have it on the corners or in the top bins, for instance, it's going to be a little less than straight on, where a shot on target straight on has a better chance of going in. This shot saved by Zach Steffen was cleared. And it was cleared right to Giannis Horn outside the box. And so this was my favorite sequence of the night, because it wasn't just that awesome chance by Betcher, but it led immediately Horn drawing the foul just outside the box to probably the most memorable play of the entire night. At 20 minutes, Edu Leuven eventually took a free kick. And I do have to give a shout out to Simon Betcher for what happened between 17 and 20. I was sitting, our seats are right above the supporter section. I was sitting watching, and at first, I have this tendency to not look off the ball. I watch the ball, see what Edu Leuven's doing, see if it's Hartl or Leuven taking the shot. And then you look down at Simon Betcher, and I can't even describe what he was doing, but he was distracting Zach Steffen. He didn't stay in this position, but he was behind the lines, kind of getting in his face, not allowing Steffen the view of where the ball was and how Leuven was setting up. He was getting in the mind of Zach Steffen. And that's not just a great thing to see from a City player, is willing to play those mind games, but you want your forward to be doing that. You want your striker to be getting in the head of the goalkeeper. And you saw the ref kind of have to separate, and the back and forth between Steffen and Betcher and the ref. I love that entire sequence. It says a lot about Simon Betcher as a player and as a person on what he's doing on the field, having fun with the whole thing, knowing what his role is outside of his positioning, but his role is to score goals and to get in the head of the goalkeeper and do what he needs to do to give us points. And he was doing that before the shot was even taken. Loved seeing that. And then the shot itself was Edu Leuven's free kick that went off the left post. The thud heard round Energizer Park. And the great thing about this was Henry Kessler's positioning to recover the ball and then getting it quickly back to Betcher. I mean, you talk about direct to goal. Kessler's pass right to Betcher, and Betcher is immediately finishing it. That finish by Betcher is exactly what you want to see. It's the no thought going behind it. It's you have the ball at your feet, you get it in goal, which is something that we do have complaints about Klaus in what his propensity is to gather the ball and then take an extra half second or second to make the shot. Betcher on this one, shot went right in. And so we were up 1-0 for about, I don't know, 10 seconds maybe. And then you look and you see less than, yeah, okay.
No,
The
less.
flag went up immediately, but the flag went up immediately. And if you didn't look at the
Yeah.
replay, I saw MLS season passes, game recap. This was a pretty good, they have this image easily. Henry Kessler was offside on the free kick itself, not
Yeah.
after the ball hit the post. The ball hitting the post doesn't matter. Kessler's positioning on that. No, but
Yeah. No, it
he
doesn't
was
matter.
a shoulder length or more, maybe offside from the free kick, which is just he's moving. You can see that he's moving during that, and he just has the slightest positioning mistake, and unfortunately, it cost us that goal. What are your thoughts on that entire sequence?
Well, it was so exciting to see that first goal at Energizer, at the new name Energizer Park. But yeah, I didn't. I started to call the goal, and I saw the flag. I was like, "Oh,
You didn't even give it
offside!"
a
So
dress rehearsal kind of a
I
thing of the
stopped.
goal call.
No, I just like go offside. Like it didn't last like 3 seconds, not even 3 seconds. But yeah, I was like, oh, finally. And Leuven, I was just talking before he shot the free kick. So the
Mhm.
past two opening games, he had a goal contribution. Both of them were assists. So I was telling my co-host Hector, I was like, well, maybe he's gonna do it a third time, but this time with a goal. So I was so happy when it almost went in, but at the end it was offside. But you talk about Betcher just putting it away, not
Mhm.
taking extra time. But I also like what Kessler did, regardless of the
Oh
offside.
yeah,
Like he knew his positioning and he knew where Betcher was too. So that was a smart play too. Yeah, obviously it was an offside too, but to see that from
good
a
shout.
defender is good
Absolutely.
too.
Rest of the first half was rather mundane. So let's just get into the takeaways. We had possession in the first half. I felt that it felt like we had more than it felt even that we had more
Possession,
than
yeah.
51%, but we ended the first half with 51% possession. Right before first half ended, I want to shout out Josh Yarrow for that play I referenced earlier, where he was wide in the wings in the attacking half, played a nice through ball to Akil Watts in the channel, cross off Betcher. That was the second highest XG chance at 0.37 by Betcher. And one of the things about this that you saw consistently, the chances that we created up to our forwards for both Betcher and Klaus, we were creating a lot of chances in the air, crosses, corners. The problem we ended up having, and I wonder how much this can actually be helped in training, is the power behind the header. The actual positioning of where they were actually putting the shots was pretty good. They were putting into the corner and the bottom half, bottom parts of the goal, but they didn't have any power behind it. So I think Betcher and Klaus have to work on that because they're getting in the right positions, like the end of this first half told us, but the power behind the headers weren't there. And if they would have been there on any one of those headers, you could say that we could have had 4 or 5 goals just from those alone.
For sure, because they were in the right spot. But yeah, to me, most of those look very weak. It could be one of those things is a fraction of a second that maybe like your head, like you didn't turn your head or something, like you didn't have enough time. But yeah,
Mhm.
they look weak. But I'm sure the team will look at that and see what can be done. But it could be
Yes.
something like that, just timing. Even though you see the play and they are in the space, maybe they are not. They miss one last second to get position right.
Agreed.
Maybe
And I think
that's what
that's
it was.
that's where you have to look at the glass half full. That's something amazing to build off of when you're creating those kinds of chances where you're getting the ball up to your forwards in the air like that and they're actually making contact. That's you have to look at that as a positive. And those chances by Betcher helped St. Louis get to the 1.06 XG to 0.2 by Colorado in the first half. 4-2 shots, 1-0 shots on target, and then 2-1 in the big chances created by St. Louis in the first half. Second half started pretty strong. Good sequences to start at 49 from a Leuven corner. It was kicked away to Totland, played to Hartle wide. Hartle got another one of those crosses up. And then this is another example of those headers into Betcher. There were a lot of good opportunities from corners, from crosses that Eddie Leuven and Marcel Hartle had. But a lot of shots went wide on this. I think a lot of those balls up in the air. And in general, there were just a lot of shots that went wide. Totland had a shot that went wide later on. Klaus had one that went wide later on from distance. You're seeing a willingness to take those shots, but the traffic in the box, I don't know if that or the timing of the shot that had people thinking what they needed to do. The balls were sent wide more often than not in those. And then there was another kind of good XG opportunity at 66 minutes where Kessler played it to Leuven. This was another build-up out of the back where Kessler moved the ball up near midfield, played it to Leuven deep centrally. Hartle was then receiving the ball from Leuven over to Totland in transition. This was a Klaus shot attempt in transition, if you remember it, at 66, where Totland sent the ball on the ground to Klaus as he's running towards goal. And watch the replay, because this was, you have to say, it's kind of a typical Klaus thing where he's running and in transition, he somehow manages to back heel the ball towards goal. That was a nice moment. And I wanted to highlight that for Klaus, because I think Klaus at this point, people are still, along with that narrative of the high volume shots, no goals, people are starting to continue the Klaus narrative of he didn't do as much, or he didn't do as much as Betcher. But there's a stat here where we're going to talk about that I would argue Klaus had himself a really quality game. And when you're in a 2-forward situation and you have a forward like Betcher who is getting high up on the field, and you have that stretching the field, you have him behind the lines, you can have a forward like Klaus doing what he did for large portions of the game.
For sure. And you don't want both strikers to be in the same space. So yeah, I think Klaus. Obviously, people get impatient because he hasn't scored in a while. But based on the formation yesterday, and Becher being the number 9, Klaus had good moves. It's just that once he gets a goal, maybe he will continue and get the confidence back. What was interesting to me, obviously, you didn't need to think about it yesterday because Cedric Teuchart wasn't 100% fit. But when Teuchart is available, will the formation have just one striker? And will it be Klaus or Betcher? Melberg didn't have to think about that yesterday just because Cedric Teuchart wasn't available. But we'll probably see those decisions in a couple of games, 3 games. But just something to keep in mind. But yeah, I know people continue being frustrated with Klaus, but I think based on the formation yesterday, that was his role.
I think
and he did well.
That what you just mentioned about Cedric Teuchart, the one striker, that is going to be one of the things that we have to debate throughout the season for the true sickos that talk about formations and positioning, because there's 2 spots on the field that I think people get into semantics with. And I am fully admitting to being part of that problem in the past. But it's another thing I'm trying to get away from this year, where I'm not going to argue who's playing the 6. I'm not going to argue who's playing the box-to-box 8, because both Leuven and Watts and Morales and Watts were switching on and off that role so many times that the fluidity of the whole thing makes that conversation pointless. And in the attack, I would even argue that I kind of saw Cedric Teuchart as a forward, a striker alongside Klaus when he subbed in for Betcher. And so you get into the semantics of the positioning. And so the subs that came in the second half, Morales for Leuven at 69, and then at 81 you had Teuchart and Conrad Wallem. Wallem and Morales made their debuts. Teuchart and Wallem came in for Betcher and Horn. One of the takeaways is the like-for-like subs. So Melberg didn't change a single thing when it came to overall positioning. Definitely didn't change a thing when it came to the formation. He only used 3 subs. He waited until 69 minutes to make one of those subs. He waited until 81 to make the last. And that's a conversation that we could have in just a second. But I want to point out the positioning of the players first in kind of where our strikers were, especially. because if you look at the average positioning that our friend MLS Analytics on Blue Sky at MLS Stat posted, the right center forward is that Betcher toy shirt role. And you've got a pretty compact view where everyone is mostly around midfield. It's a lot more compact than a typical City team was in the past 2 years. The wing backs are right at midfield. The center attacking mid is probably the most advanced player of that compactness. And you've got Klaus, whose average position was just under Marcel Hartl. But you have this Simon Betcher person, the Simon Betcher role / Cedric Toyshirt towards the end that is just stretching the field to no end. Like the average positioning of that Betcher Toyshirt role was near the other team's box. And I think that speaks to what you want to see from Klaus in playing off of that, where he can play more underneath. But I think it also speaks to just the fluidity of the entire formation, where sometimes you're going to have Marcel Hartl, who is the most advanced player on the field, the center attacking mid. Sometimes you're going to have one of the center forwards. So that's why I've tried to use the terminology of forward as opposed to striker necessarily. Not that either work, either works, obviously. Your semantics again. But it's notable to me how advanced that Betcher position, that toy shirt position was for the entire game compared to literally the entire team.
Yeah, obviously seeing it in the graph confirms it, but yeah, based on what we saw in the game, yeah, like Klaus more towards midfield, and yeah, I think he had good moves. Obviously, he needs to start scoring, get that confidence back. But I also like that Betcher got that confidence both based on how he finished the year and how he did in preseason. So more to come on that Klaus Betcher debate. Maybe they will continue playing together, but when Cedric Teuchar comes in the picture, we may see
there's an
some
image
adjustments.
that MLS Stat posts. He posted this year, and I think it's new. But there's a G+ ratings that he posted, and it's gonna. I want to try to explain this for just a quick hot minute. We talked about this last season. It's goals added. Goals added basically measures a player's total on-ball contribution in attack and defense. It literally looks at every single touch that a player has, and it calculates how much each touch changes their team's chances of scoring and conceding across 2 possessions. So this stat tries to look holistically at the impact a player has on a team's scoring chances, or chances of scoring or conceding over 2 possessions. And I love this stat looking at a player like Klaus because it really helps you understand what his overall contribution is to further the cause of scoring a goal. Now, it's important now that we have Simon Betcher on the team because I don't think you're entirely relying on Klaus's goals added to be goal scoring. Yeah, you want him to score goals. You're going to need him to score goals. Don't get me wrong. But when you look at his overall performance, and I mention this because in the goals added ratings, Simon Betcher had the most goals added and Klaus was second. And I think that's a good thing to have for your 2 forwards, your 2 strikers, because you can expect them to do that in different ways. The goals added looks at values across the spectrum, including shooting, receiving, passing, dribbling, interrupting, and fouling. So it looks at the shots. It looks at where you receive the ball. So Klaus's progressive pass receiving, where he had his back to goal and he received the ball from the midfielders, that adds positive to your goals added. Overall passing, progressing the ball up the field, dribbling, where you have midfielders like Eddie Leuven having progressive carries, Marcel Hartl carrying the ball, interrupting all those defensive works, tackles, interceptions, blocks, clearances, etc., and then fouls committed, fouls received. Holistically looking at this, it's a very valuable contextual stat that you need to have. You can't just look at the stat and say, all right, if I look at this and I say Kyle Hebert was 4th on our team in goals added, you don't know what that means. Looking at the number, and that's why I kind of hate to see this on social media in just a bubble, because you look at that number and it doesn't really tell you what the story is. The fact that Betcher, Klaus, Totland, Hebert, and Leuven were top 5 on our team in goals added doesn't tell you a whole lot until you think about what went into their roles in those goals added. Hebert had a lot of interruptions, clearances, things like that. Totland had a lot of progressing the ball up the field. He had passes that progressed it. Leuven had a lot of carries, a lot of passes. Klaus had a lot of receptions and passes, and Betcher had a lot of shots. Klaus had some shots too, so that added to it. But that's a fun stat that I like to look at holistically and looking at our players and how they're performing in the entire game. It tells a good big picture. Now,
Yeah,
no, go ahead.
I had not. Sorry, go ahead, go ahead. No, I had not seen this one, this graph before, but yeah, it really paints a good picture. So, a couple of things. Thomas Totland had a
Hmm.
great game. Great to see him back in the starting 11, and it looked like his confidence is back. He had some up and downs this year, and he just
Yeah,
became a father, so maybe extra motivation. But yeah, he looked great at that right wing back role. But I also wanted to look at the Colorado side because just looking at their key players like Mihailovic and Rafael Navarro had a pretty quiet game, and that speaks a lot about the work that City's
that's right.
defense did last
We'll
night.
post this on Blue Sky at least because that's where MLS Stat posts now. But the extra benefit of this particular stat in what they're showing is it also gives context to a player's typical goals added per game. So there's a little kind of like bell curve, and you can see where a player typically performs versus where they performed in this specific game. Betcher outperformed his goals added by a ton. Klaus was on the upper end. Totland overperformed. Hebert overperformed. Leuven was right on track. Watts, Horn, Hartle, Morales, all right on track. So it's a fun stat to look at that we're going to dig into a lot more on Fallout, especially because it helps to tell the story of what we saw on the field. Let's look at some of these stats, some of these takeaways. So the game ended. We talked about the 18-2 shots, 5-0 shots on target for City. The possession ended up 54% possession to St. Louis. And that was a really interesting notion that they continued what they did in the first half and they built on it with more possession. We talked about how they did that with the center backs moving up in the field. They progressed it through their wings a ton. You look at the passes, the passing distribution, and from MLS Stat, 40% of the overall passes in the final third were on the left wing. 49% of the passes in the final third were on the right wing. And when you're talking about passes into the box, where did they come from? 63% of the passes into the box for St. Louis City in this game came from the right wing and right channel side. How involved was Thomas Totland? How involved was Josh Yarrow in that? But also, how uninvolved, relatively speaking, was a Giannis Horn or a Klaus in some of those ways because they were living, especially late in the game, Horn and Klaus were living on that left wing side.
Yeah, and on the right wing, I also like what
Yeah.
Akil Watts and like Akil
Yes.
Watts playing with Thomas Totland. That was I really like that, and Akil Watts, like I don't know, like maybe people don't appreciate what he did, but he had a like basically he did his job, and he had some good combinations with Totland on the right side when he was on offense, and he's a good option at that central midfield role, especially until Chris Darkin is fully recovered. Obviously, now you also have Morales there as an option. He
Yes.
he had a good game too in the 22-23 minutes he was in. When he came, I think the team changed and attacked more. Like he refreshed the offense. So I'm looking forward to
And
seeing
it's a
more of Morales too.
fascinating thing you just said. He refreshed the offense. And post game, Olaf Melberg talked about Alfredo Morales coming into the game, saying he brings calmness in possession and is an intelligent photocopy. I thought Edu did really well as well. He worked extremely hard. He got a bit tired, but that's what we want. We wanted to give it all. And if they get a little bit tired after 60 or 70, we change. And this was the first sub made of the night. And so I think that's telling that Olaf Melberg didn't make his first sub because of anything he saw on the field. He didn't make it as a reason to change things up. He made it because of fitness. He needed his players to be nonstop players for 90
Hmm.
minutes, and he saw Leuven tiring. So that helps explain what it was about Eddie Leuven in particular that subbed out, because I think at first glance, you're wondering if there's something wrong. You haven't usually seen Eddie Leuven sub out that early.
Yeah, no, that was an early substitution, but yeah, that speaks of like people complain, oh, just three subs, but I think Melbourne was satisfied with what the 11 guys were doing, and guess he didn't feel like he needed to make changes. And yeah, as Leuven got tired, he got subbed out. Probably, I think people were also wondering why Betcher instead of Klaus. My guess is that probably in terms of fitness levels, he looked more tired, and the coaching staff thought
Mm-hmm.
he needed to come out. But I wouldn't worry about not using the five subs. It's still one game, one small
And there's
sample, so
also no
just
fixture
give it
congestion
time.
for a while. Like you're giving these guys full weeks of rest.
Yeah,
So that's a component. I actually wondered if the reason that Betcher was subbed out for Toyshirt and not Klaus was the role they were performing on the field. Morales came in for Leuven. That was kind of a like for like. Wallem came in for Horn. That was a
yeah,
like for like. But to the points we just made about the role Klaus played, the role Betcher played, uh, I tend to think that Toyshirt is more of a direct goal scorer. You know, what he did at the end of last season was score goals. And so you bring him in for Betcher
yeah.
in that capacity to stretch the field a little bit more. Something to watch for anyway for me. Because as we start to have the conversation in the next few weeks of who's going to start between Klaus, Betcher, and Toyshirt, you assume that two of the three will probably start. That's a question to me is will we see Klaus because the role that Betcher and Toyshirt play could be more similar than what you're asking Klaus to do. That's just an interesting storyline that I look to see in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, we'll see how that develops. I wouldn't mind seeing the three of them, but obviously, we'll have to make
Mm-hmm.
some adjustments there. But
Let's look at
we'll see what
players.
happens.
Let's look at man of the match, Simon Betcher, 81 minutes, 1.12 expected goals, 5 shots, 3 on target, 8 touches in the opposition box, which was the same number of touches in the box as Klaus, for fair comparison. Betcher won 8 of his 16 attempted duels. He earned 3 fouls while committing only 1. Was there any other option for man of the match than Simon Betcher?
Yeah. I think Kessler also did a great
Mm-hmm.
job defensively, and yeah, Betcher did a great job. But at the end of the
Good
day, it
call.
was a scoreless game, so I wouldn't give the man of the match
That's a
to a forward.
great shout out. In clean sheets, you tend to look at Roman Berkey as the obvious man of the match, right? But how would you be able to give man of a match to a person who has 0 saves? I don't know. So that I like the
Right.
Kessler shout out because of that. Now Berkey did his role all over the place. He actually had more touches than both Klaus and Betcher. He had 20 of 30 accurate passes, 7 of 17 accurate long balls. Credits Roman Berkey too. You always love a clean sheet as a keeper, and for Berkey and for the back line, starting the season off with a clean sheet, fantastic to build off of. It was Berkey's 16th career MLS clean sheet in just over 2 seasons. His first clean sheet in a season opener. So great thing for Roman Berkey to build off. Couldn't ask for more. Henry Kessler, I want to pick up stats on what you pointed out. He had 82 touches, which was, by my count, I think 4th most on the team after Leuven, Totland, and Hebert. 82 touches, 5 passes into the final third, speaking to the amount that our center backs actually progressed the ball up the field. 7 clearances, 6 recoveries, 5 of 7 duels won, and no fouls committed. Henry Kessler, he sets himself up now with this game to be the core of our back line. And I loved him as that central center back. And he talked post game about some of the positioning that Olaf Melberg instructed him to do, saying, I think I've mentioned it like 2 or 3 times, but like the back line shifting. It's been on me about shifting behind Josh or shifting behind Kyle and making sure that I'm covering those balls in behind them. And I think we did better today. So seeing Kessler as in this 3 center back role, it's important to look at because what's the roles of progressing? What's the roles of the depth in defending? Because a lot of the times you're not having those 3 center backs defend horizontally. It's Kessler dropping in behind. And that role is going to be one of the absolute most important as you look to improve upon your goals allowed from last season.
Yeah, Kessler just showing he was a great addition to the team, and he can become that leader of the back line. So very satisfied with what I saw from him yesterday. Obviously, last season he came after the transfer window, but so not a lot of games, and he also missed 1 or 2 because of injury. But it's great that he's showing he can become that leader of the backline. So it's and the team also he has a high salary, made a big investment. So I think the team when they brought him, they were thinking about the future, and he's showing that that investment
100%.
could pay
Other
off.
players of note that I logged, especially with their stats and just visual eye tests. Marcel Hartl had 6 chances created. The next highest was 1, and that was by 8 other players. 0.13 XG, 0.26 expected assists. A great game by Hartle. Positioning, I have to call out Hartle's positioning real quick before moving on, is that he had talked before the game about Olaf Melberg telling him he had the freedom and flexibility to move wherever he needed to. If you were watching Marcel Hartle, if you had just a camera on him, the camera would have gone all over the field. It wasn't
was
just
all over the
deep and
place,
up
yeah.
in the center, but he was using his best judgment to move and create overloads on both sides of the field. He moved over to play with Thomas Totland as much as he did over with Giannis Horn. Seeing that flexibility and what that means to overloading specific sides and creating those advantages, that's a massive benefit of having Marcel Hartle. Now that he's in his favorite, his ideal, his best position in that central attacking mid, I think we're going to see, we saw glimpses of Marcel Hartle, which if you call last season glimpses, I think that's, people would just immediately be excited about that. But I truly think it was glimpses based on where his positioning was and what our offense looked like. Marcel Hartle is set to be completely unlocked this season. Edu Leuven had another good performance, 92 total touches, led the team in that. His role, especially the first half in progressing the ball, I think he did a lot of running. I'm interested to see what Leuven's total miles or kilometers run was. Alfredo Morales and Conrad Walla made their MLS debuts. Overall, good performance by the team. St. Louis City remains undefeated in their home openers. They moved to 1 win, 2 draws in 3 seasons. They kept their opponents from registering a shot on target for the second time in club history. The other time was back in April 14th, 2024 against Austin in a 1-0 win. And then, don't call it a streak yet, Santi, but St. Louis City is now unbeaten in their last 3 home matches. I thought that was a cheeky little thing the club sent out. So don't call it a streak yet, but it's something to build off of. Now, going forward, where do these two teams go? Colorado travels to LAFC on Tuesday in Champions Cup. They're up 2-1 on aggregate. So as we look to the next time this week, we can see them. They're going to return, or they're going to go to LAFC to play. And the next week, they return home in MLS play against Dallas. St. Louis, who we really care about, they have a full week of rest, which I think they need from some of these subs or lacks of subs before traveling to San Diego to open San Diego FC's Snapdragon Stadium to MLS play. If you're watching us live on Flyover Fallout, or if you're listening to this on Sunday, you might get a chance to see San Diego's first game yet as they play on Sunday Night Soccer to open that inaugural feature against the LA Galaxy Sunday night at 6 p.m. on MLS Season Pass. The last thing I want to do, Santi, is kind of look around the league and say see what some of these results were that you can look into. But before I do that, I want to circle back on one topic we didn't really cover yet. Do you read anything into the... We talked about the subs and what their purposes were in more like for like, or in Leuven's case, you saw tired legs. Maybe that was the whole thing. It was just tired legs and doing that. Do you read anything to not using Salio or Ostrak? And I'll tee you up with this. In preseason, we saw Salio sub in for Klaus, and we saw Salio sub in for Marcel Hartle. His roles were a little different in each game, but if you take it at face value of those two subs, what Olaf might be wanting to use Salio as in these games, whether it's a player who can stretch the field on the left side or a player who can just control the field more midfield left channel. Maybe it was the fact that the players that he would have been subbing in for didn't necessarily need subs, more so than it is just not using Salio in a bubble.
Yeah, I don't I wouldn't read much into it. Just also remember what the temperature was like cold last night, and these are players coming back from injuries. You don't want to risk anything, especially if the team is playing well. I think they're just taking it easy with them and not risking it. Maybe we'll see a little bit of them in San Diego. The fact that they were on the bench is encouraging because if you remember, especially for Celio, the timetable was like, oh, he will miss like the first month or 2 of the season. But the fact he played in preseason, he was on the bench yesterday is encouraging. But I think the team is taking a smart approach. And last night with the temperature being so low, I think it was also
that's a really good shout. And remember the weather. Salio, Ostrak returning from injury. You don't need them. You don't necessarily want to. Well, not that you don't need them, but you don't necessarily want to push them if you don't need to use them. You could argue the same for Chris Durkin. Chris Durkin made the match day roster and hadn't featured in any game. And so he was at practice that we saw on Friday at training, but could be the same kind of situation. You look to see how this progresses in warmer weather against San Diego, but do not read much at all into the lack of use of Salio, Ostrak, Durkin, or anybody else. Looking around the league, Santi, we had some fun results from Saturday. We're not going to dig too deep, but some notables that I wanted to shout out. I got to start on the Eastern Conference. Bradley Carnell won his first game as Philadelphia Union head coach by defeating Orlando City 4-2. So Bradley Carnell, Indiana Vasilev is arriving into a team that seems to have their stuff together, scoring buckets of goals. And you got to be excited if you're a Bradley Carnell fan to see that. I'm excited that it's not in our conference, and we can at least, if you're a Carnell fan, it's okay to root for them right now because it doesn't impact us outside of the Supporter Shield. Austin beat SKC 1-0. That's fun to see. You look to teams that may make massive leaps from last year, and it stops and starts on Saturday with the San Jose Earthquake. They beat Real Salt Lake 4-0 in this revamped attack that San Jose has. You saw buckets of goals scored by 4 different players. And RSL, a team that had sold Chicho Arango, they may be in trouble. And this is an early warning sign for them. Last thing, shout out to Atlanta for Emmanuel Latte-Loth getting a brace in his debut. That was fun to see. We gave him a shout out on Thursday as a team to watch, Atlanta United. Anything else noteworthy around the league? We do have 2 matches on Sunday, Portland, Vancouver, LA Galaxy, San Diego. So while you see the standings right now of St. Louis and Colorado around, I think, 6th or 7th place, that could change based on the results today. Results really don't matter at this point. Standings don't matter at this point. Let me update that.
Yeah, the other notable to me was Miami's draw against New York City with the equalizer coming in a stoppage time really late. And I was reading some stuff this morning, like Messi was arguing with the ref after the game, and I guess he wasn't happy.
Messi not happy about something that doesn't immediately go his way. I love Messi. I love the quality he has, but yeah. All right, Santi, that's it for us on Flyover Fallout. Thank you so much for joining us on this inaugural 2025 edition of Fallout. Like we said, we'll be back the day after every match day for a recap and fun discussion looking at St. Louis City. And I know you're going to be in San Diego. I'll be in San Diego. Hope to see fans there. Can't wait to be there live and do that. We will come at you next week on Fallout, and we'll be back Thursday for a full preview and more on Flyover Footy. Stick with us. Thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you later.
Vamos City.
All right. Thanks, everybody on stream for joining us. We really appreciate it.